Millions of Americans tuned in to watch the impeachment hearings this week. The three major networks scrapped regular programming to carry them, and cable news outlets went wall to wall with coverage from Capitol Hill. But where you chose to watch the hearings and the pundits that followed could affect how you interpreted what happened, what you heard. And President Trump, who often touts the way Fox handles the news, likely saw this.
I have no evidence of any kind that the president was involved in criminal activity. That was her answer. And it should have been the last thing that she said today. Everything after that was a waste of our time in a country with so many problems that time wasting is a sin. And yet, Marie Yovanovitch kept going and going and going. By the end, the hearing sounded like a therapy session or an extended meeting with the HR department. This is the person we hired to represent our country's interests before a foreign government in one of the roughest regions in the world. Shocked, appalled. It's pretty embarrassing. In fact, it's kind of scary. Who's doing the screening over there at the State Department? How many other neurotics currently hold ambassador rank?
Today, another national disgrace. What we saw again. Every American needs to see this. A BS pathetic show trial. Zero substance, zero facts, zero, get this, firsthand knowledge, nothing, zero, zip, nada. And, of course, no due process. We got a judge, jury, and executioner, His Highness. We got the compromised, corrupt, coward, congenital liar, Adam Schiff. Oh, he was in rare form today.
CNN's chief media correspondent and anchor of reliable sources, Brian Stelter, is here with us now. Brian, if people weren't able to watch the hearings themselves, and a lot of people probably didn't because it was during the day, people work, people go to school, people have other responsibilities, and all they heard was what we just played, what does that mean for this impeachment process?
It means that the split in our information universes impacts our political universe, our political debate. If you are only hearing what Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity are telling you about impeachment, then you think the Democrats are an evil bunch of troublemakers who are trying to hurt and destroy the country. That is the message hour after hour from these top-rated shows, and it absolutely affects both the president's mindset, because he then reflects back what he hears, and it impacts what GOP voters are thinking. And ultimately, that then impacts the Republican senators. They're going to have to make a vote on this.
But are the facts breaking through and they're just spinning them, or are they just disregarding the facts altogether?
I think they're operating in a alternative universe where the damaging information that comes out during these hearings is discarded and blamed on rogue elements or things like that, or what they say is the deep state. It is this echo chamber that is getting stronger and stronger that I think these Fox personalities are inside. And ultimately, it hurts all of us because it makes it impossible to have a debate about the facts, the substance that's at stake. When they are saying these hearings are boring and bogus, they're ignoring the constitutional issues at play. But this has been very effective. I have to say, Hannity's ratings were very high this week. Not as high as the hearings overall. I think most people did hear something about the testimony, whether they soaked it up through their social media feeds, et cetera. But Hannity is 1,000% behind President Trump. So are these other players in the right-wing media universe. They're showing no signs of being concerned so far.
Well, I think it's important, though, not to paint with super broad brushstrokes, because there were a few exceptions, and I do want to play.
Yes, on Fox.
I do want to play a couple of those as well.
Yeah.
I think that if you are not moved, and we'll have to wait and see what happens in the cross-examination, but if you are not moved by the testimony of Marie Yovanovitch today, you don't have a pulse.
So we have a very powerful, persuasive witness.
This whole hearing turned on a dime when the president tweeted about her real time. That enabled Schiff to then characterize that tweet as intimidating the witness or tampering with the witness, which is a crime, adding essentially an article of impeachment real time.
We know this is the president's preferred news source.
Yes,
if he is listening to that, how do you think that went over?
I think he was probably throwing something at the television at that moment in time. But then those voices from the news division get drowned out later in the day by the opinion hosts. I think that is the bottom line. Sometimes I watch Fox during the day. I'm thinking, wow, the president really is in trouble. And then by the end of the night, I am told that he is a hero, that he is the king, and that nothing can stop him. Or that he's the victim. That's probably the best word, victim. That's what it always comes back to. So, yes, there is real reporting going on during the day, but it's drowned out at night as people are heading to bed and turn out the TV for the night. I think that is the reality of this divided media landscape that Nixon and Clinton were not up in, were not challenged during the Nixon impeachment, during the Clinton impeachment. This is a very different media ecosystem.
Bueno, mira, yo creo que no ha sido un día muy bueno para el presidente porque Sondland es una persona que apoyó al presidente, dio una donación de $1 millón para la campaña y lo pusieron a él como embajador para la Unión Europea y él iba a ser un testigo muy importante para esta investigación porque él estuvo presente durante la llamada y estuvo en comunicación constante con el presidente y él confirmó que el presidente abusó del poder de su oficina, de la presidencia, para extorsionar el gobierno de Ucrania, poniendo en peligro la seguridad nacional de los Estados Unidos, y lo hizo para beneficiarse para su campaña política, para el 2020, y en verdad no para la seguridad de los Estados Unidos.
You confirmed to President Trump Ukraine at the time, and that President Zelensky, quote, loves your ass, unquote. Do you recall saying that?
Yeah, it sounds like something I would say. That's how President Trump and I communicate, a lot of four-letter words. In this case, three-letter.
Classic Gordon.
I don't know.
It's so Gordon.
It's sort of imaginative.
You know, for
So
someone,
Raven.
It's funny. At times, I thought Sondland was trying to portray a familiarity with the president, like in this case, and at other times, he was trying to portray himself as not being. You know, at one point he said, "I didn't support the campaign. You know, I came in and all I was doing was buying inaugural tickets, and all of a sudden I wound up in this job." It was
$1 million.
$1
$1 million.
So at moments it was I want familiar. At moments it was I just showed up here in the last 10 minutes. My first day, basically.
I know that members of this committee frequently frame these complicated issues in the form of a simple question. Was there a quid pro quo? As I testified previously, with regard to the requested White House call and the White House meeting, the answer is yes. Mr. Giuliani conveyed to Secretary Perry, Ambassador Volker, and others that President Trump wanted a public statement from President Zelensky committing to investigations of Burisma and the 2016 election. Mr. Giuliani expressed those requests directly to the Ukrainians, and Mr. Giuliani also expressed those requests directly to us. We all understood that these prerequisites for the White House call and the White House meeting reflected President Trump's desires and requirements. Everyone was in the loop. It was no secret. Everyone was informed via email on July 19th, days before the presidential call. As I communicated to the team, I told President Zelensky in advance that assurances to run a fully transparent investigation and turn over every stone were necessary in his call with President Trump. As ambassador, I've had hundreds of meetings and calls with individuals, but I'm not a note taker or a memo writer. Never have been. My job requires that I speak with heads of state, senior government officials, members of the cabinet, the president, almost each and every day. Talking with foreign leaders might be memorable to some people, but this is my job. I do it all the time. My lawyers and I have made multiple requests to the State Department and the White House for these materials. Yet these materials were not provided to me, and they have also refused to share these materials with this committee. These documents are not classified, and in fairness, should have been made available. In the absence of these materials, my memory, admittedly, has not been perfect. A few critical points have been obscured by noise over the last few days and weeks, and I'm worried that the bigger picture is being ignored. So let me make a few key points. First, Secretary Perry, Ambassador Volker, and I worked with Mr. Rudy Giuliani on Ukraine matters at the express direction of the President of the United States. We did not want to work with Mr. Giuliani. Simply put, we were playing the hand we were dealt. We all understood that if we refused to work with Mr. Giuliani, we would lose a very important opportunity to cement relations between the United States and Ukraine. So we followed the president's orders. Second, although we disagreed with the need to involve Mr. Giuliani, at the time we did not believe that his role was improper. Third, let me say, precisely because we did not think that we were engaging in improper behavior, we made every effort to ensure that the relevant decision makers at the National Security Council and the State Department knew the important details of our efforts. The suggestion that we were engaged in some irregular or rogue diplomacy is absolutely false. Fourth, as I testified previously, Mr. Giuliani's requests were a quid pro quo for arranging a White House visit for President Zelensky. Mr. Giuliani demanded that Ukraine make a public statement announcing the investigations of the 2016 election DNC server and Burisma. Mr. Giuliani was expressing the desires of the President of the United States, and we knew these investigations were important to the President. Fifth, in July and August of 2019, we learned that the White House had also suspended security aid to Ukraine. I was adamantly opposed to any suspension of aid. I was adamantly opposed to any suspension of aid, as the Ukrainians needed those funds to fight against Russian aggression. I tried diligently to ask why the aid was suspended, but I never received a clear answer. Still haven't to this day. In the absence of any credible explanation for the suspension of aid, I later came to believe that the resumption of security aid would not occur until there was a public statement from Ukraine committing to the investigations of the 2016 elections and Burisma, as Mr. Giuliani had demanded. Finally, at all times, I was acting in good faith. I was acting in good faith. As a presidential appointee, I followed the directions of the President. We worked with Mr. Giuliani because the President directed us to do so. We had no desire to set any conditions. We had no desire to set any conditions on the Ukrainians. Indeed, my own personal view, which I shared repeatedly with others, was that the White House and security assistance should have proceeded without preconditions of any kind.